Hey everyone, it's your friendly neighborhood horror narrator here. And today I've got a real spine chiller straight from the valley. You know, that place where the most exciting event is usually choosing between shades of beige for your next wall paint. It all starts with the typical morning routine, a painfully dull series of events that make you wonder if you're actually living in a poorly written sitcom. The alarm buzzes at 6 a.m. sharp, a harsh reminder that the world expects you to do more than just breathe and exist. I stumble out of bed, my enthusiasm as absent as my plans for a Saturday night. Breakfast? A bland parade of the same old cereals and slightly stale bread. Truly a gastronomic delight. I like to switch things up between sugar cardboard and fiber flake. It gives me a sense of control over my life. A quick shower follows, where the most thrilling decision is choosing between the shampoo that promises extra volume or the one for sensitive scalp. I live on the edge, so I usually go for extra volume. You never know when you're going to need that extra puff in your hair. Then it's off to work, where I blend into the sea of cubicles like a chameleon who's lost interest in life. My job? Oh, it's exhilarating. I spend 8 hours a day entering data into spreadsheets. The numbers dance before my ease. A never-ending ballad of monotony. Sometimes, just to feel something, I type the numbers extra hard. Take that, cell B5. Lunch is the highlight of my day. And by highlight, I mean choosing which color of plastic container I'll open to reveal last night's leftovers. Will it be the red container with the lukewarm spaghetti, or the blue one with the chicken that's been microwaved so many times it's contemplating its own existence? The suspense is almost unbearable. Post-lunch, it's back to the thrill of spreadsheets. The afternoons are punctuated by coffee breaks, where the office coffee machine dispenses a brew so robust it could probably dissolve nails. I swear, every sip shortens my lifespan, but at least it keeps me awake through the thrilling afternoons of, yes, more data entry. As the clock ticks towards freedom, I join the rest of humanity in the rush hour, a time when the local radio station plays hits of the 80s, 90s, and today, because apparently music stopped being good after 1999. The drive home is as predictable as a rerun of a sitcom you've seen a dozen times. I could navigate these roads blindfolded, not that I'd recommend it, but it could add some excitement to the drive. Evening brings its own set of thrilling decisions. What to have for dinner, takeout, or the ambitious attempt at cooking, which usually ends with the smoke alarm cheering me on from the sidelines. I generally opt for takeout. Why mess with tradition? Then there's TV time. My television seems to think that I'm interested in reality shows where people marry strangers or build houses out of toothpicks. I scroll through channels, each click a desperate plea for entertainment. Sometimes I watch the Weather Channel. Those meteorologists seem to have more ups and downs in an hour than I do in a whole year. As mundane as life could be in the valley, everyone tensed up when it rained. Local legend mixed with a few conspiracy theories could really stir the pot. Stories of people vanishing right from their homes during storms were the community's favorite gossip. Not particularly interesting on its own, but homes ending up on the market suspiciously fast, men with odd cleaning supplies moving in and out, and the police's stubborn silence on the matter added a layer of mystery. Alien abductions, government experiments, or maybe just a really aggressive real estate strategy. Who could say? While I didn't buy into the outlandish theories, I'd be lying if I said I wasn't a bit jittery whenever clouds darkened the sky. People didn't vanish every time it rained, but often enough that you'd notice. When it rains, it pours, right? So here I was, another dreary day folding into a stormy evening, about to find out that sometimes the most dangerous things in life aren't the numbers in cell B5, but what lurks in the shadows when the rain begins to fall. Stay tuned and remember, always choose the extra volume shampoo. It might be the only lift you'll get in a day. The first rumble of thunder rolled in like a grumpy old man complaining about today's youth. I watched the dark clouds pile up outside my window like an ominous CGI effect in a low-budget apocalypse movie. As the sky turned a brooding shade of gray, the local weatherman came on TV. his eyes wide with the kind of excitement only meteorologists can muster up about bad weather. "Folks, strap in. We're expecting a whopper tonight," he declared with glee, pointing at a swirling mass of colors on the radar that looked more like a psychedelic art piece than a weather pattern. High winds, torrential rain, and yes, my favorite, flash floods. His enthusiasm was the kind that you'd reserve for a surprise birthday party, not an impending natural disaster. I sighed and looked around my humble abode. My house wasn't exactly Fort Knox. The windows rattled with every gust of wind, and the roof had seen better days, much like my dating prospects. Preparing for the storm seemed prudent. But let's be honest, it was also an excuse to do something other than watch reruns of old sitcoms. I pulled out my emergency kit, a collection of items that included a flashlight with dying batteries, a half-empty box of waterproof matches, because you never know when you'll need to light a candle in a downpour, and a stash of canned food that could survive the apocalypse, or at least a prolonged internet outage. Deciding not to take any chances with the valley's notoriously fickle weather, I also dug out an old camping lamp and some kerosene. I'd bought them during a moment of ambition when I thought camping might be a good hobby. The same ambition that had me buying a gym membership, which I used precisely twice. With the storm brewing like an oversteeped cup of tea, I went around the house securing windows and checking the basement for any signs of leakage. The basement was another sore spot, damp and musty. It was like the backdrop for a horror film where you'd expect something sinister to lurk in the corner. Fortunately, the only thing lurking there was a sad-looking Christmas tree and some forgotten gym equipment. Outside, the wind began to howl, a sound eerily reminiscent of my last date when I suggested splitting the bill. I hunkered down, ready to ride out the storm. Dinner was a frozen pizza, the kind that promises a feast, but delivers something that tastes like cheesy cardboard. I shoved it into the oven, setting the timer. At least if the power went out, I'd have my feast of mediocrity to sustain me. As I waited for the pizza, I flicked on the TV, scrolling through a list of programs that made me question the very fabric of modern entertainment. Reality TV shows where people married strangers or fought over who could bake the best cake in a bizarre kitchen setup. I settled on an old horror movie thinking, what better way to ignore a storm than with a film about a storm? Halfway through my movie, the part where the unsuspecting protagonist decides to check out the strange noise alone, I heard my own strange noise. A tapping, so faint I thought it might be a branch against the window. But as I paused the movie, the tapping grew more insistent, like someone was impatiently drumming their fingers, waiting for me to answer. Reluctantly, I got up and peeked through the blinds. Nothing. Just the wild dance of trees bending under the force of the wind and rain pelting the glass like tiny drumbeats of doom. Returning to my couch, I tried to refocus on my movie, but the real-life sound effects outside my window were far more compelling. The wind screamed, the rain thrashed, and then, all at once, the lights flickered and died, plunging me into a cliché, alone in the dark during a storm. "Fantastic," I muttered, fumbling for the matches. As I lit candles and placed them around the living room, the glow cast eerie shadows, transforming my familiar space into a scene straight from my horror movie. Just then, a louder bang from upstairs made me jump. It was probably just the house settling, or so I told myself. Grabbing my half-cooked pizza, I ate under the flicker of candlelight, pondering the wisdom of watching a horror movie as my own home seemed to turn against me. Little did I know, the true horror was yet to come, as the storm outside was about to bring more than just wind and rain into my life. As I braced for a long night, little did I realize that soon, I'd be wishing for nothing more than boring reruns and lukewarm pizza. Stay tuned, because the storm in the valley was just the overture to a night of real terror. So there I was, chewing on the saddest slice of pizza in the Western Hemisphere, surrounded by candles like I was about to conduct a seance. I half expected to summon the spirit of a long-dead pizza chef who might tell me where my life went wrong, starting with my dinner choices. The storm raged on outside like it was trying to win an award for most dramatic performance by an atmospheric phenomenon. I was settled on the couch, a book in one hand and a lukewarm slice in the other, doing my best imitation of calm. The house creaked and groaned under the strain of the wind, sounding like the bones of my elderly neighbors during a morning stretch. Suddenly, the tapping returned. At first, I dismissed it as the wind's latest attempt at communication, figuring it had upgraded from howls to Morse code. But then, the tapping grew more rhythmic, more deliberate, like someone was at the window performing the world's least enthusiastic drum solo. I put down my pizza, a decision that tells you the seriousness of the situation. Nothing comes between me and food, and approached the window. Peering out, I expected to see a tree branch, or perhaps a confused bird that had mistaken my window for a bird hotel. Instead, there was nothing, just the sheets of rain painting everything with a gloss of menace. Chalking it up to my imagination, which seemed to be in overdrive thanks to my horror movie marathon, I returned to my couch. That's when things took a turn from slightly creepy storm night to plot of a horror novel written by a particularly disturbed author. From upstairs, a thud sounded, loud, unmistakable, like someone had dropped a bowling ball. I froze, pizza slice halfway to my mouth, which is by all accounts the worst position to freeze in. A rational person might have called out, asked if anyone was there, maybe even investigated. But let me remind you, I am a person who talks to his pizza. Rationality checked out a long time ago. Nevertheless, my curiosity and overwhelming concern for my sanity got the better of me, and I crept upstairs. The corridor was dark, each step creaking ominously underfoot as if warning me to turn back. But hey, what's life without a little suspense, right? I reached the top of the stairs, and that's when I saw it, or thought I did. A shadow, just at the edge of my vision. It was gone when I turned to look directly at it, but I knew something was off. Something about the air felt charged, like right before a lightning strike. And then, the real fun began. A loud crash from the guest room sent me nearly out of my skin. I approached, each step feeling more like a final walk on a plank. I nudged the door open, and what I saw inside was absolutely nothing. No monster, no ghost, no axe-wielding maniac. Just a lot of old, forgotten junk and a window banging in the wind. I secured it, lecturing myself on the virtues of not jumping to conclusions. Back downstairs, I settled once again, trying to laugh off the jitters. That's when every light in the house flickered and went out, plunging me into darkness so complete, it felt like being swallowed by a black hole. Great, I muttered, because why would I want to see during a potential home invasion by paranormal entities? Fumbling for my flashlight, I turned it on, only to have it flicker with the enthusiasm of a dying firefly. At that moment, with perfect timing, something moved in the periphery of my vision. Not the ambiguous shadow from before, but a clear, unmistakable figure. Tall, impossibly thin, with limbs that seemed to unfold like a spider's. I'd like to say I charged heroically toward it, but in truth, I yelped. Yes, yelped, and stumbled back, nearly crashing into my own furniture. The figure paused, and I swear it looked as surprised to see me as I was to see it. There's nothing like a mutual jump scare to break the ice, right? As I stood there, heart attempting a solo escape through my ribcage, the figure moved closer, its movements disjointed, like a video lagging. The air around it seemed to shimmer, like heat off pavement, but cold, so very cold. The creature's eyes found mine, and for a second, we just stared at each other, probably both thinking, well, this is awkward. Then with a speed I could barely follow, it moved. Not toward me, but past me, heading downstairs. I was left standing there, flashlight in hand, wondering if I'd finally lost it. Was it real? A figment of my overtaxed imagination? Or maybe just the world's most terrifying houseguest? Whatever it was, it had certainly livened up my evening more than any TV show could. Curiosity is a strange thing. Despite every horror movie ever shouting at me to do the exact opposite, I followed the creature. I mean, how often do you get to confirm if you're starring in your own ghost story? As I tiptoed down the stairs, the only sound was the storm raging outside and my own breathing, which, embarrassingly enough, sounded more terrified than a kid on his first haunted house ride. The living room was dimly lit by the storm's occasional courtesy, flashes of lightning that offered mere glimpses of my surroundings. In one such flicker of natural lighting, I spotted the creature. It was standing by the front door, as if considering whether to brave the storm or stay, and possibly endure more of my company. The creature turned, and its face, if you could call it that, was a maelstrom of shadows and light, ever shifting, never settling into a recognizably human form. It was like trying to make sense of a badly tuned TV, mostly static with the occasional half-image. That's when it hit me. Maybe it was just as lost and confused as I was. Granted, it didn't look like it was worried about mortgage rates or whether it had left the stove on, but there was a certain hesitation in its movements. Summoning what was left of my courage, which wasn't much, mind you, I spoke. Can I help you?" I asked, my voice sounding squeakier than I would have liked. There was no reply. Did I really expect one? The creature looked at me, cocking its head slightly, an oddly human gesture that made it even more unsettling. Suddenly, a loud crash from the kitchen made both of us jump. Yes, both of us. Turns out, supernatural beings can also be startled by exploding soda cans. The storm had caused a power surge, and my fridge had gone haywire, spitting out its contents like a toddler refusing vegetables. The creature, seemingly taking this as its cue to leave, turned back towards the door. Before it could reconsider its exit strategy, I dashed to the door and flung it open, offering it the freedom of the storm. Over the chaos of my hospitality, it paused on the threshold, gave me what I swear was a nod, though that might be my mind attributing polite society norms to an eldritch horror. And then it stepped out into the rain, disappearing as quickly as it had appeared. Standing there, door open, rain splattering the hallway, I was left to wonder if I'd imagined the entire encounter. But then I looked down and saw the wet, muddy footprints on my floor, leading in from the door and back out again. No, not imagined then. I closed the door, my heart still racing, and laughed. It was a shaky, hysterical sound, but laughter nonetheless. Well, I said to myself, at least it didn't try to sell me anything. As the adrenaline faded, I realized I was standing in the dark, in a possibly haunted house, with a pizza that was now as cold as my prospects for a normal evening. I cleaned up the mess, both physical and psychological, and settled back on my couch. The rest of the night passed uneventfully, if you don't count my constant over-the-shoulder glances and jumping at every sound. By morning, the storm had cleared, and with it, the lingering specter of the night's terror seemed almost like a distant memory. A very vivid, very wet memory. So next time you find yourself bored with the humdrum of daily life, just remember, it could always get worse. You could be visited by an interdimensional being during a power outage. Or, you could just stick to watching horror movies. They're much less messy. And if you ever do find yourself hosting an unexpected phantom, maybe just ask it what it wants. Worst case, you end up with a good story. Best case, it leaves without dragging you into another dimension. Either way, you'll want to stick around for more chilling tales. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and keep those lights on. You never know who might drop by.